Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sports Time HQ. I am your host, Fernando, and joining me today is our guest star today, Jesse Morse, Dr. Jesse Morse. Make sure to follow him all over social media at Dr. Jesse Morse. And he's also a co-owner of the Fantasy Doctors. So, Jesse, introduce yourself. How you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
And so let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about the rookie draft here. Rookie draft week, and we're going to talk about the injuries. We got the doctor here. Doctor's going to let us know, should we draft these guys in our leagues or should we stay away from them? Should there be concerns on people getting drafted early or not? And first person we can go right through is Carson Strong, the quarterback, the rookie quarterback, Carson Strong. He's got great arm strength. He's got great accuracy. He had a poor combine rating or scouting anyways, and he lacks his mobility. And the reason why is because he had the 2 knee surgeries. And doctor, let's hear it.
Yeah. So, if it wasn't for this knee injuries, the kid be a stud. And he's by far the riskiest player in the entire draft for me. He's almost 6'4". He's 225, but the problem is when he was, how old was he? It was in 2017. So 5 years ago, he's 22. So it was about 16, maybe 17 when he had it. He had a right knee injury where he actually had a piece of the bone kind of pop off. Grab my little model. And essentially what happened was the bone literally popped off. Usually it happens underneath the kneecap, kind of up here. That's usually how this plays out. And when it pops off, it kind of floats around in the knee. So if you're over 18, usually it doesn't heal on its own. And even if you're under 18, sometimes it doesn't. So he ended up having to have a big surgery, missed the entire season, and had 8 screws put in there. Well, early last year, early 2021, he had a second surgery to actually take a piece of his hip and then insert it into his knee to try to probably help stabilize it again. And then he didn't even make it to the season yet, and he had another surgery right before the season to clean it up. The problem is this knee is never going to be the same. It will be good until it breaks down again. And then it's just going to be one thing after another. It's an unfortunate injury, and most players never even make it this far. So the fact that he made it this far is kind of impressive.
So are you saying that NFL teams should be cautious on drafting him and maybe should stay away from him in this year's draft?
Yeah, and I think if you remove this knee injury, I think he's probably, I don't know about a first round pick, but maybe a first or second round pick. You probably haven't heard anything about him because, in my opinion, because of this. There's just so many red flags on this. If you look at the rest of his profile, he looks pretty good. But so someone will probably throw a dart at him just because, just because QB is so hard to find. And even if it's only a backup QB, it can kick the tires for a couple of years, and I think they could pull it off. But investing a first or second round value, it's just too pricey, too expensive for someone that's probably not going to be able to pan out. So unfortunately, I think that's how it's going to play out. If he happens to miraculously, land in a spot that's good, end up doing well, I wish him the best of luck. I just think this knee is going to eventually give him a lot of trouble.
He's been actually projected between the 2nd to 4th round, but the second round, like you said, it's kind of more later projection. So he could easily still fall in that late 2nd round pick. But like you said, he could be a very good backup, for instance. But with these knee injuries, it's really been tough for him to really be that star quarterback. So now looking into maybe a dynasty perspective for fantasy teams, should people just stay away completely then? He's probably going to be, since he's a quarterback in Superflex leagues, he's still going to be drafted maybe the 3rd round or even late 2nd.
For me, I'm on the Malik Willis train, so
yes.
I have him at the top. Ritter's up there. You can go back and forth on Corral And then, Howell's kind of up there as well. So, I mean, those are my top, 4 basically. Purdy, is what he is. Zap is what he is. And he's kind of at the bottom 3. So if you haven't got one of the top 4, I get that that's probably your safest bet of the bottom 3. But Zap's kind of sneaky. We'll see how it plays out. But at that point, I'd probably go, really for one of the top 4. Whoever falls to you, Sam Howell could have a sneaky career.
I was just going to say, what about Howell? Because I have him ranked over Strong.
Yeah, I mean, he has one minor left non-throwing shoulder injury, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of the QBs are relatively low. Like, they don't have a whole lot of injuries. Ritter has a little bit of injury risk. Corral has a little bit of injury risk. Howell has the lowest, in my opinion. Then Zap, then Purdy, then Pickett, then Willis, and then you go Corral, Ritter, and Strong at the end. Just some of the injuries they had, some of the way that they played, that type of stuff.
Okay, so we're going to have to see where Carson Strong is going to land. I mean, he could maybe even keep sliding down in the NFL draft towards the end of this week. I mean, who knows? You could, like, Zap, he could be drafted over Strong somehow.
Yeah, I think this year's going to be one of those rare ones where you have no idea where anyone's going.
Yes.
And, I was just reading something today. Instead of having like 500 players because of COVID pushing everything back, there's like 700 players that have draft potential this year, which is insane. So you're going to have a lot of undrafted free agents, and you're going to have a lot of guys pushing back so that because reportedly after the 4th round, the hit rate is pretty comparable between 4 and 7 or whatever at the end.
Yeah.
So if they push back to get a less valuable pick, but to try to play out 2 guys as opposed to 1, I could see that, and they'll pay them cheaper. All of these injury scores and all this stuff is actually available if anybody wants it. There's 2 parts. One, you can buy it by itself on tfdinjurydraftguide.com. If you want it part of the bigger injury draft guide that will be coming out for the season, I'm going to throw this in with it. You basically just pre-order the other one, and we give you access to this one now. That's the same place. So this I don't think you'll find a deeper dive on any injuries really anywhere in the NFL than I do. I probably spend 3 to 4 hours on each player. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. But for what it's worth.
Yeah, and don't you guys have also a app, Fantasy Doctors app?
Yeah, we have that. We're kind of going to be revamping that up. We're going to do a ton of new stuff this year. The website's going to be massive turnover. It's kind of look like the old Roto World, I'll call it, but it's going to be a significant injury version of it. Every player is going to be a super deep dive with analysis. Any injury is going to pop up on their page and is going to give you kind of the full breakdown and kind of give you the risk score for the week and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I actually used your app last year because, I mean, using the app, I mean, you really don't find one central location where injuries are like all the information. So, I mean, using the app, I got to see all the injuries. Like,
yeah.
Even when a little tiny thing tweaks a player, I didn't even know about it until I went over there and saw it.
Well, yeah, and that's the reason I created it. Like, it's called TFD. And the reason I created it is basically I wanted a central location for all the different beat writers, because I don't want to look up 7 names every time I want to search for something on Twitter.
Yeah.
So basically what I did was I created almost like mini subfolders for each team, adding like 5 or 6 reliable beat reporters. And if they don't cover it, then it's probably not true, or and they all present like different views, like, hey, I saw it from this angle, hey, I saw it from this, hey, I heard this, and you can kind of collectively put it all together. I might even put that on the website so you can kind of flow that way. I'll see. I don't know if I can get it to work, but I can try. And I did that for all sports, but that's it's predominantly for NFL. I'll have to make some adjustments because sometimes the beat reporters change teams and sometimes they don't do it anymore. So you do have to make minor adaptations, but in general, it serves the function that I was trying to do. It's not your main source, but at least it gives you a place that you can check, review, be like, oh, what are they saying, all in one place? And, maybe even find new people to follow.
Exactly. And I mean, I love it. It's a great central location, like you said. Once again, tfdinjurydraftguide.com. Let's go on to running backs now, rookie running backs, and that's Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller, he's strained. I think it's strained abductor muscle, if I'm correct. And he had an absolute career seasons in college. I mean, 2,993 yards. He had 25 touchdowns. He averaged 5.5 yards a carry, and then he had also 1,600-yard rushing games, and 6 of them were last fall. So, talk to me about that injury.
So, in general, he's a little bit on the higher risk side. The problem with Spiller is not that he missed any games, which is actually impressive because I can't find that he missed any.
Yeah.
It's the injuries that he had and the type of injuries that he had and the kind of the way he plays.
Mm-hmm.
The adductor is a groin strain. Groin strains are awful, very, very frustrating. A lot of NFL guys get them, almost every position, because when we pick up our leg and we rotate or we plant our foot and burst, like push forward, that's your groin. The Abductor Longus is usually the muscle that gets strained. The problem with them, they're kind of like a calf. They re-injure really, really easily, and they are very frustrating to finally get to heal. You'll think you're 90% of the way back, and then you'll tweak it, and you'll go all the way back to the beginning. They're awful.
Wow.
And most guys take several weeks, 3-4 weeks, even to get rid of a grade 1. Grade 2s are awful. That's what Curtis Samuel had last year. They most of the time they end up going to surgery because guys just can't get them back. Everything they do ends up setting them back, and then they can't go. They're just in this vicious cycle of injury. But most of the time, if it's a grade 1 and they take it seriously, if it's the off season, you're not usually super concerned. 2 weeks is kind of the window for a running back. If they, I remember David Montgomery had one a couple of years ago in 2 weeks, and he did good, and he reportedly never had any issues with it the rest of the year, and it was preseason. But Spiller, he's kind of like fallen out of favor from compared to what we thought. It seems like the whole A&M squad has, which is kind of weird, but he actually had a foot injury in 2020. I remember, I think it was his trainer or somebody that was affiliated with him actually commented and said he had basically did that whole season with a broken foot or broken toe or something along those lines. He probably had surgery on it, but we never heard it. We only have probably 20 to maybe 25 to 30% of all information. We're like flying blind here. Even if you dig, you just don't know about a lot of this stuff. A lot of these guys that see me during the week or during the season or during the off season, that's not reported. You won't find that anywhere, and the team don't even know about it. So like, if I know about it if it's my patient and the team doesn't know about it, and the media is not going to talk about it, where are you going to find about the injury? You're not. It won't exist. No. So that's part of the trouble. Is like we only know a little bit of information here.
Yeah, I know. I remember last summer when you were on the show, you even talked about it and you said it exactly. I mean, we don't really know every single injury that happens. I mean, take a little tweak, a little finger or whatever, and you'll still never know because they'll just go to the doctor, talk to them, and like you, for instance, and they'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones that know are usually their trainers.
Yeah,
their trainers. And their physical therapists, if they have like a one that really rely on them, they'll know all. Besides that, in the player themselves, think about it. You have 50 to 120 guys on each team. How can the medical staff know all the injuries for all of them? It's just not literally not possible. It's just not possible. And most of the guys don't report it. They're not, unless it's big enough where they can't do anything or that needs to be addressed, they're not going to probably report it. So they just don't hear about it. And a lot of the times it either doesn't get treated or it does get treated, but in a, not with the team type of fashion. And a lot of the teams, and that's a separate discussion, but a lot of the teams are very conservative. They will not go anything off brand. They're not very aggressive. They won't use a lot of products that are expensive or not, off label, we'll call it, which there are a lot of stuff that is awesome and really works, but they won't use them. But the players want them. So then they have to kind of figure out how to get them without the team paying for them, which is unfortunate because they end up paying for it out of pocket. But either way, injuries are tricky, especially with the high level guys.
Yeah. And with Spiller here, I mean, this is, like you said, a grade 1, and you said he has a high level of risk coming back. Are you concerned? Like, where do you rank him? Do you think he should be drafted over Kenneth Walker, over Breece Hill, or no?
So I think so. I've been using a lot of RAS scores lately, and when you kind of break those down, they do a pretty good job of where guys sit. But in general, I think risk score, he's kind of in the middle to back part of it. I actually have Breece Hall as my 1, but Kenneth Walker is a close second. Okay. Both of them happen to be really low risk too.
Yeah.
Like really low risk from an injury perspective. And then, I think Rachaad White may get a little bit of love. Dameon Pierce is going to get some love. We'll see a couple guys like Jerome Ford, maybe James Cook because of the pedigree. Devonta Price, I think, will end up somewhere, and he's kind of sneaky. I do like Zamir White a lot, and the pedigree is there, but he is very high risk. And then Pierre Strong will end up somewhere. I like Kyron, but I don't know how he's going to play out. He didn't test that well. Ely is on the smaller side. Guys usually under 200 pounds don't do well. I think Eckler's like the exception. Maybe I don't know what James White plays at, but he's kind of, there's not many guys that can handle it. Bam Knight or Zonovan Knight, kind of a little bit risky as well. And there's a couple guys that I didn't look into because you have to draw the line somewhere. But but in the middle, he's kind of in the middle of the road. My scores range from basically 0 to 10. I don't really give anybody a 0 because that's just not realistic. And 10s are like they shouldn't even be playing football. So like my worst scores are usually like 6s, 7s. I mean, I have a couple 8s, but it's not common. Most of the guys are in the 3 to 4 range, which is still considered elite. And low risk. When you get to the 5s and 6s, that's when you start talking about moderate risk. And for me, and I have Spiller at a 5, so he's kind of in that middle ground.
Okay, so do you think Spiller? Because I mean, like you said, everyone has an injury risk. Like they could be the healthiest person alive and their season off, maybe even a torn ACL. I mean, comparing Spiller to White anyways, because I know we'll talk about Zamir White as well, because Zamir White's one of my guys I love too. Spiller and White, do you think both of them have more risk than the other, aka maybe White because of his 2 ACL tears, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so from a major okay, I'll put it this way. I've been tracking all NFL, pretty much all NFL running backs, injuries, games played, rushes, touches, so adding in receptions, and then games missed due to injury back to college.
Yeah.
And I just started this recently to kind of put it all in one place. He's already missed basically 2 full seasons. To give you an idea, Najee Harris, who was at about 1,100 touches, and Jonathan Taylor, who's at like somewhere in the 1,500 or 1,600 touches, have never missed a game. Ever.
Wow.
Jonathan Taylor's reportedly never missed a practice since high school. So, it's sometimes, I mean, the ACL is the ACL and it's a different mindset. But there's a lot of biomechanics in it. It's like up until Hopkins missed his at the end of the year with his knee. Like he missed 1 game. He's like out of 7 years or something. Like Mike Evans never misses games. Like he hates it. Landry, until he had his bad knee injury, didn't miss a game. I think he played like 5 or 6 years straight. So like some guys are just known to power through injuries. There's certain injuries you can't power through, obviously, but a lot of that has to do with preparation. And some guys don't properly prepare. They don't step back, review video, review doing them, box jumps and looking at biomechanics and why is their knee collapsing in, and then stepping back to say, oh, that's putting high risk for my ACL. What can I do to prevent that? They may not be reinforcing their knees in the off season like something I do for some of the pros. These are things that they can do, but some guys don't because they're like, it's not bothering me. I'm not going to, mess with it. And it ends up coming back to bite them.
And I mean, this man came into college and he was the number one ranked running back out of high school.
Yep.
But yet, because of those 2 missed seasons and the 220 ACLs in both knees, I mean, are you concerned?
That's
like,
crazy.
I know you're concerned.
That's crazy. So I mean, Zamir White has some of the craziest high school stats you'll ever see. They're like almost like Derrick Henry type crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, 14.1 yards per carry.
Insane. Electric.
Like what?
You don't see that.
Okay, so you don't see 5-star recruits. Like there's probably 20 a year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
He was a 5-star running back. That's rare. There's probably 3 or maybe 2 or 3 every year, every other year. Like they just don't come about. He was a 5-star running back. But unfortunately, he tore his right ACL and reportedly no other additional damage. So no meniscus, no MCL. He underwent ACL reconstruction in December of 2017. Then was heading to Georgia. He tore his left ACL in preseason.
I know he didn't even set foot until
before even getting on the actual field. And he missed, and he reportedly injured meniscus. Reportedly, obviously we don't know the details, but so he missed his entire season. So why is this relevant? Well, ACLs are very challenging in their own right, but now an ACL on both knees. Like, and what's crazy is the re-injury rate of an ACL is about 30% combined, 21% on one knee, 9% for the graft, going out 2 years. So you say, well, that doesn't happen often. Odell Beckham. Deshaun Watson had it when he came out. He did one knee in college and one knee in the NFL. So it's not common, but it happens. White is another example. He didn't even make it a year. And some of that is compensation. Some of that is biomechanics. One just happened to go before the other. Some of it usually, sometimes it's not fluky. This probably wasn't fluky. I'll give you an example. J.K. Dobbins, that was fluky. That was a contact injury. 75, 80% of ACL tears are non-contact. No one is near you when it happens. J.K. Dobbins hit someone and tore it. If that guy wasn't there, he probably wouldn't have tore it. But it's the damage is done, though. That's the problem. So and here's the rate limiting factor. The talent is there. The pedigree's there. There's no question. But if we remember good old Gurley playing also at Georgia, he had his ACL tear. He was an elite prospect. He was a top 5 guy coming out of high school. They took a ton of meniscus reportedly when they did his ACL. And that's why his knee just basically gave out early in his career, because he didn't have the cushion, and the cartilage couldn't handle it. The arthritis developed so quickly that his knee just couldn't handle the rigors of the week in, week out season. So I don't know how much injury White has within his knee, but now he's got it on both knees. So we just don't see that a whole lot.
But the crazy thing about that, though, is his sophomore and junior college season, he still averaged 5.4 yards a carry, which is still insane because you tore both your ACLs. Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see it. I mean, are there exceptions? Yes. I think Frank Gore tore his twice. Sony Michel tore his. Nick Chubb, by the grace of God, didn't. If you see the injury, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there are plenty of guys who have tore their ACL and came back and been relevant. Adrian Peterson is the exception. You know,
Exactly.
Dalvin Cook took a year and ended up coming back, but most guys struggle. I mean, this is a very difficult injury.
Yeah.
But if anybody can do it, it's an elite caliber of is his talent. I think someone will kick the tires on him because the talent's there, because of the pedigree's there, because of where he went and who he was playing against. And you know, and as we've seen, running backs have a pretty short half-life and they're really expensive when you hit one that's really good. So,
100%.
you know, could he be, you know, an Aaron Jones type who kind of goes to UTEP because he ended up living there and then ends up playing in the NFL for 6-7 years? You know, it'll be more.
I mean,
I don't know. You know, I think it'll be interesting to see, but I have a feeling that he will be there. But I unfortunately do have some concerns just because it makes, you know, the concerns make sense. But in general, he is no longer in that risk category from the 2-year mark because he's past that 2-year mark. And now he should be good. But, you know, we don't know. Again, we don't know how much damage is in each knee.
Nor how much life, like NFL life he has left.
Correct.
Anyways, I mean, I have Isaiah Spiller ranked number 3, and I also have Zamir White ranked number 4 because, in my opinion, or ranked number 5, I think. But Zamir's top 5 for me, and I honestly am drafting him in all my leagues because he's just got the talent. And like you said, he's number 5. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit. Yeah, he tore both his ACLs. Yeah, his risk is high, but I mean, the risk reward that you're getting a really high reward if he ends up not actually having another risk.
Another guy that's sneaky that could be like a James Robinson type is Pierre Strong.
I heard about him. Heard about him a lot.
Yeah,
he's been coming. He's been rising up.
Pierre Strong is up there. You know, there's a couple. Algier, I don't think is going to do a whole lot. Maybe Goodson, but Brooks, I don't. Haskins, I don't think so. No. Robinson could be kind of sneaky. Pierre, the two kind of dark horses for me are Strong and Pierce.
Yes.
The way they used him at Florida was stupid. He was super elite too. This is a 4-star guy who had stupid numbers. And he was supposed to go to Alabama, but then he's like, nope, going to Florida. But then they never used him. I don't know what the hell they did with him, you know. But he's had 2 injuries. He had a concussion, which is what it is, and then he had an ankle sprain in 2016. That's it. That's all we have. There's no other information.
It's been 6 years. It's been 6 years since that.
You know, I mean, so the pedigree is there. The running style is there. In general, I think it'll be cool to see. And he might end up in the 4th round, maybe late 3rd, somewhere around there. And that may be someone that you want to target.
Could be a great steal too. Before we go on to wide receivers, what's maybe 1 or 2 running backs that you're 100% or maybe like very high percentage staying away from?
So from an injury perspective, I think James Cook is kind of up there.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
It's just a gut. I mean, Ely, I don't know how much love Ely's going to get, but Ely's up there for me. Yeah. I do. White, Zamir White is that risk reward guy. No question.
Yeah. No question.
You know, he's like you rolling the dice on Saquon in the 1st round this year. He could home run, but he could miss 70% of the season. Yeah. You know, he's that guy. You know, some of the other guys, Letty Brown, Goodson, Algier, I don't know where they stand. I'm not a good video guy from an, you know, like a talent perspective per se, so I can't speak for that. But James Cook, you know, the talent is there, obviously. The pedigree is there. You know, his brother's a stud as well. He was a 4-star too. But he's had some injuries. You know, he's had multiple ankle issues. He's had a shoulder issue. And that's just all we know about. You know, when you're playing alongside DeAndre Swift, he followed basically Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, and then he also played with Zamir White. I mean, that's elite. That's top of the line elite guys. All of those guys are going to be in the NFL or are in the NFL. So you're not going to get a whole lot of touches, but if you can hold your ground and you know, you're deserved to be there per se, you know, the talent is there. The question is, Can he put it all together? And I just don't know if he's a 3-down back. I don't see it. So it'll be interesting to see. And he had a pretty bad ankle injury in 2019, which usually does pretty well for running backs. That's the same thing that Dak had, and probably Michael Thomas.
Yeah, and I remember we had a whole talk last year about Michael Thomas and to stay away. And hey, Keith and I have both been staying away from him. Lastly, rookie wide receivers, real quick. Let's go with Jameson Williams, Drake London, and Justin Ross. Drake London, he fractured his ankle. He had no ligament damage. Jameson Williams, he suffered an ACL tear in his national title. And then Justin Ross had a really scary spinal injury in 2019. Yep. He missed 2020 with a he missed 2020 with that. And then in 2021, he had a stress fracture in his foot.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on these three wide receivers? I know Justin Ross, he's a guy I love, but I'm really concerned on his injuries, of course.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with London. So the kid's talented. There's no question.
Super talented.
He has this crazy ability. I mean, they're starting to get some guys coming out of USC. This is going to be the third or fourth one. You had, recently you had Bobby Trees, you had Pittman come out, St. Brown came out, and now Amon Ra, and now you're going to have London. So, and there's one guy I'm missing. I can't think of who it is, but so they've had some guys. He's from Cali. He stayed in Cali. It makes sense. He was a 4-star guy. For his pretty much all his injuries happened in 21 and 22, like literally all in the past 12 months. He had concussion, which is what it is. He didn't even miss a game. Then he had a ankle fracture and reportedly no ankle ligament damage. He had surgery, and then he had this hamstring strain we just heard about a month ago, or not even a month ago. The ankle fracture is obviously the biggest concern. Where's my ankle? So usually this is a fracture of the small bone on the outside. So this bone at the bottom, though, usually, and when that happens, a lot of guys have to get a plate and screws. If he happened to also suffer a high ankle sprain, then maybe he has what we call a tightrope. But in general, if he did not injure any, like the bone, I don't care about. The bone's fine. Yeah. It's the ligaments that I care about. If he didn't have any ligament damage, big ligament damage, he's always going to have some, then he's good. If he had ligament damage, then we're going to have some issues, because then he's going to be at increased risk for rolling that ankle, for high ankle sprains, for stepping on other players, like happened to Saquon and he rolled his ankle and it blew up. That can happen if he has pre-existing ankle injury. But in general, I'm not really worried about him. I really not.
Really?
No. I mean, I have him at a 4.5 out of 10, which is kind of middle of the road, and it's really only because of that ankle. If he didn't have the ankle, he'd probably be like one of my lowest risk guys. He's there. The fact that he was a monster as a true freshman, competing with Pittman and St. Brown and still put up numbers. Okay. Respect. And most of these guys, you can tell that they're elite. They're talented. If it wasn't for this, he would probably be a top 10 pick if it wasn't for that ankle. And he may still go as a top 10 guy.
And the Jets want him at number 10.
Yeah. I mean, I think top 5 is a little crazy. I just don't think that's possible. Or I guess it's possible, but unlikely. I think it's going to be more 5 to 10 or 10 to 15. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers that go in this draft because of the crazy market that's changed between Kirk signing, kind of crazy numbers, and just even regular, wide receiver 2/3s being really expensive. You saw what Jamar Chase did. You saw what Waddle did. They came in and were monsters and very, very effective immediately. So if you have a guy like that, they can change the game pretty quickly. Jefferson did it pretty fast as well. So they're seeing these elite top guys become game changers. And this is a draft where there isn't a whole lot of elite quarterback play, and that's usually the kind of defining. Running backs are just not worth it in the first round. If you think of all of your favorite running backs, they're all in the second round. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Swift, like almost all of them are in. Cook, I believe, was a second round pick.
I think so.
I mean, McCaffrey's kind of the exception, but again, it's just not. We haven't seen a whole lot of that. I expect the running backs to kind of go late first, maybe one falls in, and then early second, in the 40s are probably when they'll start falling. Tight ends, there's really not a whole lot of any truly elite tight ends. There's a couple that have potential. So then you're just talking about depth guys. You have in defenders. So I think that's where when you have this crazy talent and it's turning into a massive passing league, they're gonna get a guy who's talented and cheap. That's the other part of it too. They're spending 20-25 million a year. If someone like Debo wants that, you have someone that you can pay that for 3 years, and maybe get not similar production, but we've seen what Jefferson and Chase have done, and Waddle.
Production.
It's pretty crazy what these young kids have already done really quickly. But so at London, I'm not overly worried about. JMO, I love. He is definitely talented. It's kind of an interesting situation where he had to move because I wouldn't say can't compete, but didn't compete well with Garrett Wilson, with Olave, however you pronounce it. And so he ended up going to Alabama and just kind of setting the world on fire. He's kind of a little guy, but in terms of weight, he's 6'2",
189 pounds.
But he's like 189. So, but that doesn't mean he can't be effective. I mean, we've seen a lot of the guys in that range be pretty good, and he has, money, to burn. The ACL was done by Dr. Lyle Kane, reportedly, who is the team doc for Alabama for like the past 15-20 years. That's who did Derrick Henry's ankle fracture before he went to Alabama, and his foot fracture earlier this year. Lyle Kane is partners with Dr. James Andrews, very famous doctor. He also did Mechie's because he's the team doc. And they do something really cool. There's an article about Jameson and about Mechie, and I believe it was The Athletic, that does extensive detail that you never hear ever. And it talked about graft type. It talked about how they do their rehab protocols. It was really impressive. And basically nowadays, Alabama, I can't speak for any of the other universities or teams, they're using GPS tracking and have thousands, maybe millions of data points all throughout the season. Practice, games, they're putting them in a document, in a spreadsheet, and then if someone gets injured, they're using those and comparing the post-injury GPS studies. Is he coming out of his break at this angle? Is he accelerating at this speed? And they're comparing them and they're ramping them up depending on percentage of that player's normal. So
that's crazy.
It's crazy. It's beautiful.
That's insane. That's impressive.
Yeah. So they're saying that Jameson Williams is ahead of schedule by about a month.
Wow.
Which is good. So will he be 100% healed by week 1? Probably not, but I think he'll be out there. And I think he would have been the first wide receiver off the board if it wasn't for his ACL. I still think he might be. If not, he'll probably be second or third.
Because he tore his ACL January 10th?
January 13th, 11th, and he had it done on the 13th, which is good. And he had a small meniscal tear reportedly as well.
Yeah, and the 7 to 9 month recovery, I mean, like you said, he's ahead of schedule. He could easily be on the field week 1, and he could be blowing up during week 1.
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to worst, they kind of baby him for a couple weeks to a month. But I think realistically he's going to be there, and he's going to be rocking. His ability to stretch the field is rare. A guy who's similar to him, kind of the poor man's JMO, is Jahan Dodson of Penn State. He's
He's
kind of
projected later first.
He's sneaky. And then Wilson is just that reliable hands. The kid's got ridiculous hands. He was one of the rare 5-star guys too, as well. And then he's pretty healthy. He had a back injury in high school that cost him some games, but he hasn't had really any issues since. A lot of people love Pickens. Sorry. He also tore his ACL. Andrews did his. He had a shoulder injury before that. He was another 5-star guy. The pedigree's there. And the other guy that's kind of the feast or famine, the boom guy in this draft is Justin Ross.
Yeah, and he had a related foot injury like Derrick Henry's.
Yeah, so Justin Ross is one of those guys that if he didn't have an injury to his neck, he still could be a generational guy. Like he's that DeAndre Hopkins, that AJ Green, that stud wide receiver that's going to be around for 8 to 10 years. Like that's who he had the potential to be. That his I think it was rookie or sophomore year, one of the two, was bananas. His numbers were insane. But unfortunately, they found this weird spine injury. And it was in June. They ended up repairing it in June, but they found this spinal injury where 2 of his bones were fused. And it led to some issues and needed to be surgically repaired in order to be stable. So he basically missed all of 2020. And then when he came back, probably because he ramped up pretty quickly, he suffered a stress fracture in the fifth, which is basically kind of the base of the pinky. This was probably in the base towards the back, kind of where Henry had his, but he ended up pushing through pretty much the whole season. He reportedly started having it in the first week of September and didn't end up fracturing it until the middle of November. So he literally played 10 weeks on it, or at least 8 weeks on it, which is impressive. And likely what happened was he rolled his foot and the bone just was already kind of beat up and it just fractured. And after that, he reportedly had screw into his second and third surgery into second and third. So in actuality, maybe it wasn't his fifth and it was actually maybe the second and third. Again, we don't know. We don't have specifics. He is that type of guy that the talent is there. Will he ever be able to stay healthy enough to produce? Someone will throw a ball at him. Someone is going to draft him with the hopes that the talent is there and he can stay healthy.
He's been thrown to from Trevor Lawrence, so I'm thinking maybe even the Jaguars could take a chance on him.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind that. I think it would be cool. I mean, anywhere. I just want to see what he can do. I want
to see his potential. Exactly. I love Justin Ross, and I think he's got great potential. But where are you grading him to end this show on? Where are you grading Justin Ross?
So he's my riskiest wide receiver, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Him and Zamir White had the same risk score, to give you an idea. One an ACL, 2 ACLs in a running back, a neck and foot, significant foot injury and neck injury. In a wide receiver, kind of both pretty comparable. To give you an idea, the injury that Justin Ross had is basically what they had to do surgically to Chris Carson, who we may never see play again. FYI.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any clearance yet, but so we'll see how that plays out. One other guy I'm fascinated about that I don't know. The talent is there. I just don't know. He's one of those elite freaks that I don't know if he's going to pan out or if he is. Christian Watson. His numbers are off the board. I just don't know if he's going to if he has enough talent underneath not talent, just really reps underneath his belt in a competition where he was at to see can he break out? Can he kind of do that? But I mean, the kid's a monster, 6'5", 208. I mean,
beast.
The thing is, he literally had one scholarship offer, one. And it was actually for a safety. He wasn't even being scouted as a wide receiver. And then he goes and he just, ends up lighting the world on fire. He only had 2 injuries. He had a knee injury in high school, a meniscal tear. And then he had a hamstring injury. That's it. That's the only 2 injuries he's had. His RAS scores were bananas. I think he was a 10 or not, like really high 9s. I think he was the highest rated one. And I mean, he has the talent to do so. I just don't know if the drop in talent in terms of defensively up, at NDSU is going to be enough. That drop from that level to the NFL is that may be a huge adjustment. So I don't know, I don't know enough about whether or not he can pull that off. But the talent is there, and the physical talent is ridiculous.
I've seen him sneaking into the late first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think some teams are a little kind of googly eyed about like his specs, like because they're there. I mean, there's not many guys that are that big.
No.
I mean, 6'5", almost 210. That's a big boy.
Huge.
So I mean,
that's a tight end type, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Well, tight end, he has the height for the tight end, but the weight. No, small. So and the other part is, again, we don't know when you're talking about FCS level. Their injuries are not reported. Like we don't know. Did he have a ton of injuries that we don't know that maybe he suffered that maybe weren't on the books per se, or couldn't keep him off the field, but he dealt with, or maybe dealt with in the off season. Mm-hmm. Because of the level of competition there and the level of reporting, like if someone breathes wrong in Alabama, about it. That doesn't happen at some of these smaller schools. So it's a lot harder to track injuries as a result.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where these wide receivers land. I mean, really where any of these players land, because like Jesse said, and like I've been saying for the last month, I mean, this is probably one of the craziest off seasons we've ever had. And it's going to be one of the craziest drafts we've ever had, because there's really no set player to go to any specific team, really, realistically. I mean, even the number 1 overall pick, we've seen many mocks going everywhere with the Jaguars.
We have like 3 or 4 different guys that maybe could be there, which is crazy, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's something you've never seen before. So it's going to be something crazy to see. We'll be live streaming on Thursday, but tomorrow we'll have Troy King on the show talking about NFL mock draft, NFL rookie mock draft. And Jesse, it's been a pleasure having you on. Make sure to follow him all over social media at Dr. Jesse Morse. And then don't forget about following him all over the Fantasy Doctors as well, at the Fantasy DRS, and make sure to go visit their website at tfdinjurydraftguide.com. Make sure to check out that draft guide. Dr. Jesse, do you have anything else to say about you and your website or anything like that?
Not right now. Ramping up. We're about to start our full court press July 1st. The big injury draft guide is going to be out. So we're talking deep dive on every player, risk score on every player, comparing rushes to injuries to games missed. We're talking about different rehab protocols for every major injury. We're talking about coaching, medical staff breakdowns. Are they aggressive? Are they not? We're talking like this thing is going to be like a Bible. It's going to have like sections. So that will be really cool. And it's only like $25. Like, I mean, it's basically giving it away. But at the same time, we'll put a lot of some of that information onto the new website. It's almost done. And you'll get a lot of that. So my goal is to have everyone's first thought when they think of an injury, like, where do I go? I want you to go to thefantasydoctors.com and everything will be at your fingertips. That's my goal. So let's try to execute it.
Yeah, fantasydoctors.com, where you can, it's a central location for injuries. I love using it. I think it's a great tool. Make sure to go follow him all over social media. Make sure to keep up with all the injuries using their website and using the Twitter accounts. And make sure to follow them all over social media. Once again, I'm your host, Fernando. Joining me today is the doctor, Dr. Jesse Morse. And you can make sure to follow us all over social media at SportsTime HQ. We'll see you all tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern.